This weekend will be a rough one for Disney in general and for Kathleen Kennedy in particular, because South Park went after them and they went hard, mocking the very ideology and social messaging that Disney has been so proud to infuse into Star Wars, Marvel, and everything else. Maybe they thought they were changing the world, maybe they thought they were on the right side of history, but South Park just exposed that the only thing they changed was shareholder value, and they changed that for the worse. In this editorial, I will go through the gist of the episode and how Kathleen Kennedy is getting the short end of the stick, how Gina Carano thinks Kennedy is liable to react, and finally, why the South Park guys are ultimately behind the curve on this one, because by now, it's Bob Iger and Kevin Feige they should be going after. While the South Park special Joining the Panderverse also dealt with how AI is exposing the laziness of a population who can't do anything, having wasted years and hundreds of thousands on useless college degrees, it is Disney that gets the brunt of it. As a corporation, Disney is accused of the laziness of making the same content over and over again, with the only difference being increased levels of pandering by way of ever more diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that really is an apt description for what Kathleen Kennedy has been doing to Lucasfilm and all of its properties, most notably Star Wars. Here, it's worth noting that Star Wars started out with a primary built-in appeal to boys, but it also appealed to a fair few girls exactly how it was, and that's part of how it became the biggest entertainment franchise of all time, until it was surpassed by Marvel, another franchise that during its prime had built-in appeal to boys, but which also appealed to girls, exactly how it was. But Kathleen Kennedy evidently did not like that model, and felt that more girls and women could be converted into Star Wars fans by making it female-centric. Or put in practical terms, by making the Force female, putting ever more women in there and take on the patriarchy, represented both by the male characters on screen and the male audience watching.
In a very woman-centered world, which I was very excited to kind of be in that, because I feel like Star Wars is very like patriarchal, so it was kind of cool to have like this sort of woman-centered figure.
Kennedy was really going for something revolutionary here, only it had been tried before and it failed miserably then. There is no evidence to suggest that any more women actually became invested in the Star Wars franchise when Kennedy turned it female-centric. If any did, they were offset many times over by the number of boys and men, you know, the built-in audience, dropping out in droves. And they did. That's why Star Wars merchandise no longer sells, and why all the recent Star Wars series on Disney Plus are certified flops. Failing to learn from history, Kathleen Kennedy had repeated the exact same mistake that 3 decades prior had killed He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. As we broke down in detail, Mattel had assumed that when they cancelled the Filmation He-Man series and shifted all their marketing efforts towards She-Ra, the girl audience would flock towards the Masters of the Universe, while the boys would remain loyal to what had become a girls' franchise. Neither happened, and so the biggest toy franchise in history up till that point nosedived in a spectacular fashion never seen since, at least not until Kathleen Kennedy. Of course, we all know this. It doesn't matter how many great movies Steven Spielberg and Kennedy's husband Frank Marshall made that she hijacked some of the credit for. When left to her own devices, she proved to be the single worst executive in film history. In Hollywood, of course, everyone pretends not to know this, and that Kennedy is the real-life version of the girl bosses she puts on screen. But it's difficult to pretend away a South Park episode. So, how will she react to this? Well, Gina Carano has some thoughts. Kathleen Kennedy loves strong women on screen, but only if they subscribe to the same cult-like neo-Marxist gender ideology as her. Gina Carano did not, and so using tweets that were tame compared to those of others in Lucasfilm whose mentality aligned with that of Kennedy as an excuse. Carano was fired from her role as Cara Dune. That is incidentally how Kennedy ruined Jon Favreau's Mandoverse. Cara Dune was supposed to appear in a Rangers of the New Republic series followed by a solo Cara Dune series, but since both of those were cancelled with her firing, Boba Fett was ruined to cram in the Mando storylines planned to take place in those, and it was all downhill from there. Either way, Carano had some choice words for Kennedy, and remember, this is someone who used to be under Kennedy's employ and who knows what she's like. Re-Xing Geeks and Gamers, Carano said, "This is the part where KK demands any YouTubers get censored off of YouTube for sharing and laughing at this hilarious episode. She'll have YouTube disable the thumbs down option because of the ratio she'll receive, then she'll have her publicist ghouls make sure Variety and The Hollywood Reporter run hit pieces about the South Park creators and their families, smearing their names through every useful idiot she has under her thumb who would sell their soul to work for Lucasfilm. She'll activate her online mob to repeat that the South Park creators are racist, bigot transphobes, and demand the South Park creators publicly apologize by only using words she approves of, and finally, she'll demand they subject themselves to a re-education course of 45 people in the LGBTQ community Zoom call to sit there and listen of how badly they got their feelings hurt, all over a little boop of a South Park episode. But maybe, just maybe, the jig is up." This is of course Carano referencing her own experiences with Kennedy following her beep bop boop tweet. And the thing about the re-education course is a reference to the Chinese communism-style struggle sessions that cultural revolutionists like Kennedy likes to put anyone who fails to fall in line through. It's a nice way of keeping everyone in line and on message. Kennedy reportedly had to go through one herself when John Boyega singled her out in his complaints about the racist manner in which Finn had been written off the sequel trilogy. But while Kennedy deserves everything she gets from South Park and more, I'm afraid the South Park guys are missing the real targets here. Going after Kennedy right now is good and well, but in a way it's too late. The damage has been done. They needed to have gone after her years ago when it still might have made a difference. By now, can the brand ever recover? At this point, it's not looking good. So I would rather the South Park guys have focused their efforts on the parts of Disney where something constructive still might happen, i.e. they should target Bob Iger and Kevin Feige. Everything Kennedy did, she did under Bob Iger's watch and oversight. He could have stopped her, and he did step in and prevent more movies, but he did not stop her from doubling down on Disney+. At best, that makes him equally responsible. But it gets worse. It was Marvel that succeeded Star Wars as the biggest entertainment franchise in history, but in recent years, that too has gone to the dogs. And the person the most responsible for that is Kevin Feige, who knowingly and wittingly repeated what Kennedy was doing to tank Lucasfilm over at Marvel.
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
And surprise, surprise, it tanked Marvel too. I don't know, it's almost as if this is a universal recipe for failure or something. But if it is, there is one book that will not tell you that. And that would be MCU: The Reign of Marvel Studios by Joanna Robinson and others. There are some interesting tidbits in it, which have spawned many articles as of late. But on the whole, it is a puff piece that rewrites history to benefit Bob Iger and Kevin Feige. It manipulates you, the reader, with a clever mix of half-truths, unverified rumors, and some outright lies. But these manipulation tactics are easy enough to see through and dismantle if you are knowledgeable enough to recognize them, which I just so happen to be. So I will cut through the manipulation and break down what this book refused to do, namely the real reason why Marvel went off the rails in an imminent video. You don't want to miss that. But sadly, this platform would seemingly prefer that you do. You see, YouTube recently did some shenanigans to their notification and recommend features, which makes us and all of your other favorite YouTubers all the more difficult to find. So, to increase the chances that you actually get notified of our upcoming real reason for the fall of Marvel video, then begin with smashing the like on this video, leave a comment, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and indicate you want notifications on all videos. And here's what's new and most important of all. If you should get a notification whenever a new video drops, then please click on that video as soon as possible, because how fast you do that not only determines if you'll get more notifications later on, it directly determines how many others receive notifications after you. Apologies for this info dump, but that's what we're dealing with, folks. Now, with those messages delivered, please let me know your thoughts on this in the comments.